Welcome to my Dunedin, New Zealand travel guide. Dunedin, also known as Otapoti in Maori, is one of my favorite cities in New Zealand, and I wanted to compile a list of things like where to stay, how to get around, and things to do in this gorgeous city on the South Island or Te Waipunamo of New Zealand. Let's get into it. So let's start with where to stay. My top recommendation for this is to stay near the Octagon. This is a really good central spot. It's close to bars, restaurants, and the railway station, Settlers Museum, University of Otago, and the Botanic Gardens. If you're not going to have a vehicle, staying near the Octagon means that you're going to be able to get around on foot to a lot of the city's attractions or jump on public transit to see a few things outside of the city. You could also stay outside of the city center in spots like the Otago Peninsula, which would be an amazing place to use as a base. It's so gorgeous out there, and you'd be really close to the Royal Albatross Center and Larnac Castle. A pro tip on this is that motels in New Zealand are typically really quite good and affordable. I have found a lot of motels in New Zealand are actually nicer than hotels, so keep an eye out for those. And of course, do your research, check Google reviews or TripAdvisor or wherever you go for those kinds of reviews to make sure you're getting a nice place. Dunedin is a pretty compact and walkable city, but a lot of the main attractions are not in the city center. So let's talk about getting around. I highly recommend getting a rental vehicle or driving to Dunedin if you can make it happen. This is going to make exploring a lot easier. And you can take public transit in Dunedin, though it doesn't go to places like the airport or some of the attractions that are far outside of the city. We didn't have a vehicle on our first trip, and I think it really impacted my enjoyment of that trip and of Dunedin. Now, you can take public transit to places like Baldwin Street or around the downtown area, but it's not going to take you directly to places like the Royal Albatross Center or Tunnel Beach. It'll usually get you close within like a 20 or 30-minute walk, but sometimes that walk is straight uphill, so just something to keep in mind. If you do want to take public transit when you're in Dunedin, Dunedin utilizes the Orbus network, so you can get a B card for $5, or you can just go ahead and pay cash fares. If you are going to go ahead and get the B card, it can be pretty beneficial to have that if you're going to be traveling around New Zealand, because that card actually operates in 9 different regions in New Zealand, including places like Nelson, Hawke's Bay, Taranaki, and Gisborne. Let's talk about things to do. The majority of items on this list, there are 12 items on this list, are things that we have actually done. So number 1 is the Dunedin railway station. This is an iconic spot in New Zealand. It's one of the most photographed buildings in New Zealand and the Southern Hemisphere. And they've just recently completed renovations to the outside. So it's so pretty, and it makes for some really amazing photographs. The railway station is free to enter, it's free to explore and walk around, but I do recommend checking out the New Zealand Sports Hall of Fame, which is located inside the building, and it's only $6 per adult to get in. The museum has a really amazing collection of memorabilia and sports history. It's super interesting. I think if you're a sports fan, and even if you're not, it's well worth the entry fee to check this out. Number 2 is the Botanic Gardens. So pretty much anywhere you go in New Zealand, you're going to find a beautiful, well-kept botanic garden that is free to enter and explore. I found Dunedin's Botanic Garden to be really quite beautiful. There's even an aviary section where you can go and check out some really gorgeous birds. We took the bus near the bottom of the gardens and then walked up to the top. Along the pathway, you get some just spectacular views of the city, the rolling hills, and all the gorgeous gardens and scenery. This is a great spot to go and explore on a beautiful sunny day. Number 3 is the University of Otago. So this is a campus. Of course, there are going to be students everywhere, but it's such a beautiful place to walk around. There's a nice large pathway, and there's all of these historic and gorgeous old buildings to take photos of. Highly recommend if you're going to be doing a walking tour around Dunedin. Number 4 is the Octagon. So I mentioned this before in where I think you should stay. The Octagon, again, has so many bars and restaurants and shops, and it really comes to life at night. You'll see lots of locals out here enjoying live music, beers, and spending time in their community with friends. You can explore this in the day and also in the night to get a totally different feel. At nighttime, all of the gorgeous buildings in the area are lit up, and there's some really captivating street art to take photos of. Number 5 is Baldwin Street. This is definitely a must-do in New Zealand. It is the steepest street in the world, and we were able to take a bus right to the base of the hill and walk to the top. It is a pretty steep incline. It's definitely going to get you sweating, but it's well worth it to get to the top, get those photos, lie down on the street, see how steep it actually is. Just be careful because this is a real street and people are driving up and down. And if you have a car, feel free to drive up and down this street because it is crazy how steep it is. Seeing the houses that are just normal, straight up and down, and then the street beside them being so inclined, it's a really cool experience and definitely something you gotta check out in Dunedin. Number 6 is the Signal Hill Lookout. This is not accessible by public transit that I could find. I think you could take the bus close to it and then walk up the hill. But if you have a car, drive to the top. There's a pretty decently sized parking lot and then a whole area you can walk around, take in the views of Dunedin, and check out this really cool rock that is sourced from Edinburgh and where the castle stands in Edinburgh. This is, of course, a really great spot to watch the sunset as well. Number 7 is the Mount Cargill Lookout. So similar to Signal Hill Lookout, this is one that you can drive up to and park and walk around. You are able to hike around this. We did encounter a few hikers who were coming up there with their dogs. And the views at the top are just spectacular. Like, we're talking nearly 360-degree views. You can see Dunedin City, the ocean, the beautiful waterscapes, and the rolling hills in the distance. What an amazing spot to go up and get photos on a nice day. I would argue that this lookout spot is even better than Signal Hill, and what a place to catch a sunset or a sunrise. Just wow, this really blew me away. Number 8 on this list is Tunnel Beach. Public transit is going to get you within a 20-minute walk, but it's a lot easier to drive here because it's kind of in the back country area with all these small little roads to go down. The car park is really, really tiny, and it's one of the busiest attractions in the area, so you're going to get lucky if you actually find a spot here. When we were here last, they were working on a brand new parking lot that looked like it was almost done, so I'm hoping that that has been completed or will be within the next few weeks, so that if you're planning your trip, you don't have to deal with a really tiny parking lot. This is one of those epic spots in New Zealand that is definitely a must-see. It's one of those spots that just looks so much better in person. Photos and videos do not do it any justice. It doesn't even look real. It's so beautiful. The walk down from the car park is quite steep, and I've heard that you can actually walk on the beach at low tide. We did not get there at that time, so we didn't do that. And again, this is a really busy spot, so be prepared for crowds. I've got a bonus tip for you guys on this one. If that little parking lot is packed and you want to go drive somewhere close by to kill some time before trying again like we did, just drive about 3 minutes down the road to Blackhead Surfing Beach. It's worth a visit if you're going to be in the area anyway. The beautiful long surfing beach with these gorgeous rocks in the distance. Really great spot to stop and take in some of the views. Number 9 on this list is the Otago Museum and the Otago Settlers Museum. We weren't able to check out either of these museums on our previous trips, but both of them have amazing Google reviews and they look incredible. Both of these museums are free to enter, like the majority of museums in New Zealand, which is great. Number 10 is the Spates Tour. I'm pretty sure it's Spates. It might be Spites. Let me know down below what the pronunciation is because I always get this one mixed up. Spates or Spites is one of New Zealand's oldest breweries. They started back in 1876, and they do have a ton of interesting history in the area. I consider this more of an interactive museum than an actual brewery. I don't know how much they actually brew on site anymore. Spates or Spites is now owned by Lion, which is owned by a larger company called Kirin, a huge Japanese conglomerate beverage company. And I don't normally recommend supporting big business like this, but because Spates or Spites has such rich history in the area and in the country and is still very well loved and supported, I think the $30 to do the tour and get the tasting board at the end is well worth it. The tour was actually quite amazing. We were the only people there that day, so we kind of had a private tour, walking through the building, seeing all these historic pieces of equipment. If you're into beer, if you're interested in the history of beer in New Zealand, this is a must-do. Since we're talking about beer, I'm going to throw in a couple of craft breweries. There are 3 that I would recommend checking out in Dunedin. The first one being Noisy Brewing. I love their beer. Their tap room is so cozy and inviting. This is a must-do if you're into craft beer, I would say. And then another cute, really small, quaint brewery is called Steamer Basin. It's hidden in this little back alley in a beautiful historic building, and their beers are just incredible. Emerson's is another really popular brewery in New Zealand that you can check out when you're in the area. They have a really nice tap room. It is massive. It's definitely more on the commercial side, but those are 3 other breweries that I would check out in the area if you're coming to enjoy some beer. Oh, and I should mention, one just popped into my head, a brand new place called Moon, which has a brewery underneath it called Dog Star. They have easily one of the best burgers in New Zealand. Unbelievable. The building itself is gorgeous. It's right in the downtown area. Definitely want to give them a shout out because the beer was just 10 out of 10. The food, wow. The service, like unbelievable. So please go check them out if you're going to be in Dunedin because they were the best. Number 11 is the Royal Albatross Center. So this is located at the tip of the Otago Peninsula and is not really accessible by transit. I'm sure you could book a bus tour out here from Dunedin City if you really wanted to and you didn't have access to a vehicle though. I'd recommend going on a windy day. Really, the windier and the cloudier and the doomier the better. This is going to give you the best chance at seeing albatross. I have another bonus tip for you on this. Once you get up to the car park, which is absolutely massive by the way, just walk a little bit away from the parking lot, away from the Albatross Center. There's a little pathway that goes up to the coast and you can actually see albatross right from here for free. We got lucky. We were able to see a couple before going on our tour, so it's definitely worth giving it a shot. We ended up doing the Albatross Classic Tour for 54 New Zealand dollars per person and got really lucky because we saw so many albatross chicks and parents coming in to feed them. Again, it was a super windy and gloomy day, and this was just the best possible conditions to see these birds. You can also see penguins in this area. We weren't there at the right time of day. I think usually the penguins come in around dusk. So if you can make that happen and do the albatross and the penguin tour on the same trip, that would be incredible. And the last item on this list, number 12, is Larnac Castle. We didn't end up going here because it was the same day we went to the Albatross Center. It was really windy, really gloomy, and it was 22 New Zealand dollars per person to just go into the grounds and look around. That's a little too steep for me, especially on a day where it's not really the nicest to be outside taking photos. If you wanted to go and do the full tour of the castle, it's 45 New Zealand dollars per person. If you're into that kind of stuff, I think it would be worth it for you. For me personally, not worth it. I've seen castles in other countries and toured them, and it's just not really my thing. So a lot of people are going to say this is a must do. For me, it isn't. Dunedin is a really quirky and special place in New Zealand that's unlike any other city. It's got such a nice Scottish charm. The old buildings are so beautiful, and it gets better every time we go visit. I hope this guide helps you plan your trip to Dunedin. If you're from Dunedin or you have been there and have a few other things to add, leave me a comment down below about what you would add to this list. Otherwise, check out these fun vlogs of us exploring Dunedin and getting a first-hand look at all of these amazing attractions.